G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope you are super well. Here I'm going to talk about the gear that I took with me on my Japan/Singapore trip. Look at this. We are inside the Jewel at Singapore Airport, and there is a monorail that runs through the center of this thing. Absolutely brilliant. It's always a tough decision what lenses to take. You don't always know exactly what you're going to be confronted with, and plus I always like to play and experiment with new things and push the envelope. So piece of gear number one that I feel that pushed the envelope was the 135 planner. An astonishing lens. It still blows my mind. It still looks different to pretty much every other lens that I have from the Z range, and Nikon has basically told us that's a knocked level lens when it comes to optical performance, but of course it's a 1.8, not a 0.95. And I suppose just that small difference in f-stops is what makes the difference in price, which is significant. It's 3 or 4 times less expensive, the planner. Lens number one, thoroughly enjoyed it. And yes, you do have to work a little bit harder when you're framing 135mm. 85 is easier. It's true. But I really enjoy a challenge. And the next lenses that I brought were the 20mm 1.8, the 50mm 1.8, the 85mm 1.8, and the 24 to 120 f4, which is just an absolutely brilliant full frame lens. Absolutely did exactly what it's designed to do. It's very flexible, gives you a lot of reach. If you have it on a Z8 and you're shooting 4K, you can get out to that 2.3 times crop. So that's really cool. That's really useful. I just got to show you this amazing Christmas tree, and this is the Jewel, and well, it's epic, and I absolutely feel like I'm in a science fiction movie. This could totally double as the spaceship's habitat, green habitat for the spaceship. I mean, there's all these layers and tiers, and we can see people gardening here, and the monorail goes through. That's the track for the monorail there. Just brilliant. Anyway, we'll keep going with the gear. The 24 to 120 ended up being the lens that I left on the Z8. We'll talk about cameras in a minute. Just because of that immense flexibility. You can certainly carry around the 20, the 50, and the 85 1.8s, which I did. I carried them around. But look, this trip was different to previous trips that I've done. Previously, most of the time, traveled overseas by myself or with my wife, not with kids. So the reality was there was less shooting time, and we were doing way more kids stuff. We went to Disneyland and Universal Studios, but we did a whole lot of extra stuff on top of that. And thus the 24 to 120 f4 was just the all-rounder that I needed. I absolutely needed that level of flexibility quickly. I didn't have the same amount of time. Just look at this view behind me. It's just ridiculous. And over here. And thus, what I ended up doing, and the two bodies that I took were the Z8 and the ZF. And the ZF just has consummate picture quality. High ISOs are not a problem for it, whether it's video or stills. And of course, you can't get everything. You don't get 45 megapixels with the ZF, but you get an astonishing 24 megapixels. So I ended up having the planner on the ZF, and on the Z8 I had the 24 to 120, which just gave me really broad coverage. And that's what I took with me. And of course, we're shooting on now the DJI OSMO Pocket 3, which has been a really invaluable tool. And I did look at the previous Pockets, but they just did not have the low light performance that this camera has. And the low light performance has proven to be absolutely spectacular on this camera. And so that has rounded out the kit really nicely. Now, in order to be able to do 8K editing when you're on the run, I've got my M1 MacBook Pro, which just does all that stuff so well, along with a 4TB SSD, and we're done. Absolutely brilliant. And so that's my kit. And here we are, we're going to say goodbye to the Jewel. We have to go to our aeroplane now. If you ever come to Singapore, don't miss out on seeing the Jewel. But we've got to rush to get to our plane now. The gear has worked perfectly. I never left for wanting. I didn't end up using the 50mm 1.8 at all. And that was simply because, as I said, there just wasn't the time for it. I even bought a tripod that I never used. But again, there wasn't the time. We were just on the move for 2 weeks solid, doing anywhere between kind of 12 and 18,000 steps a day. It takes a lot of time to do that many steps. We were just covering a lot of ground. So I'm really happy with the gear. I never felt like I needed anything longer than what I had. And if I really wanted a little tiny bit more reach, I would use the 135. Then you can crop that. And of course, it's a field of view. It is not really 200 mils. Gets very close to 200 mils, by the way. And of course, you get that result when you go to the 2.3 crop. So I never needed a longer lens. I really didn't. I had more than enough with the 120 or the 135. And the 20mm gave me enough width. I always try to be creative with my framing anyway. If I feel like I don't have a wide enough frame, then I will simply think of a different frame. Here's the Apple store in Singapore Airport, by the way. A lovely, cool Apple store. Anyway, we just walked out of the Jewel. I'm up here on the other side of that giant Christmas tree, and it's all looking just very lovely and very spectacular. I hope you've enjoyed the sprinkling of images from that selection of lenses and cameras from Singapore and Japan. It's been an awesome 2.5 weeks with my visit to Nikon HQ and the Nikon Museum, meeting up with Bobby Tonelli, and all the other layers that have come of this amazing trip. It's been so nice. And to repeat what I said in a recent video, traveling with the family, even so it's hard work, it's just been absolutely beautiful. Little people, they don't have the same mental desire and probably not quite the same physical endurance to do the crazy long days that we did sometimes. And they did run out of steam eventually. But that's okay. Not only did we have an amazing trip, but we learnt what is best for our next trip. And I learnt what is best from a lens perspective. And I probably won't bring the 50mm 1.8. I brought that for a specific purpose. It was actually for my live streams. I was planning on doing live streams, but we just didn't have time. The opportunity never arose. All right, everybody, I'd love to know what gear are you next traveling with? The gear just keeps changing. New things keep coming out all the time. What's your selection going to be? Do please let me know in the comments below. It's been so good to see you. And if this is your first time here, I would love to see you again. So please do subscribe, please share, and please like. All right, bye for now from the beautiful Jewel in Singapore. And if I do a 180 with this camera, you'll see that the Singapore airport is right here in front of me. And that's it. That's where we take off from. All right, check out this crazy atrium. Pretty neat. Pretty neat to have this shopping mall right next to the airport, and it's also a beautiful destination in its own point. You don't have to spend a cent in here. All right, Thanks everybody, I will see you soon.